Started for today. I'm going to share my screen with you and we will get started here. So like I said, today we're going to be going over lead capture forms, and we're going to be talking about the benefits of using them, why they're important for your business, and we'll start at the foundational level. And if you are following along, we have an outline here. You can either download the outline up at the top where it says handouts, and you can also download this if you are watching it on the YouTube channel. Whenever this gets posted, we'll put the link to the handout in the YouTube description so you guys can download it there. So let me go ahead and jump in here and we'll get started. Now, the first thing we're going to talk about when it comes to lead capture forms is their functionality. What do lead capture forms do in Dubsado? And what lead capture forms are responsible for is getting people into Dubsado. So the first thing we're going to talk about is what they do, which is they create new projects in Dubsado. So let's jump over to Dubsado here. And we're going to jump to the projects page first. And if you're not familiar with the projects page, this is going to be where you manage everybody in your account. So leads, jobs, everybody who you're working with will all be in the project section here. And if we go to the lead section, which is in the top left-hand corner of the projects page, we'll click on all leads. So the leads section is going to be where people are placed, the projects are placed with people who are not booked with you yet. So these are going to be people who are inquiring about your services. They are asking about your price points. Maybe you're getting on a call with them, a consultation with them. And so with the projects page, what lead capture forms are going to do is they're going to create a new project once they get filled out. So lead capture forms are responsible for getting people into Dubsado. This is a contact form that you can put on your website that will get people into the system, and that way you can start communicating with them. If you aren't familiar with what projects do, projects are ways that you can communicate with your clients. They're like client folders where you can send contracts, invoices, your workflows will run through projects. All the communication that you do will all run through a project. So in order to get a project in Dubsado, we're going to use the lead capture form to capture their information and then bring them into Dubsado. So foundational level, we want to at least get them in Dubsado, and we can do that via a lead capture form. So that's the main functionality with the lead capture, is creating a new project in Dubsado. And now we'll move on to number two. Number two is collecting information. So now let's move on to the actual lead capture form here, and we'll talk about collecting the info. So we know that the responsibility or the functionality of this form is to get people into Dubsado, but we also want to make sure that the information that we're collecting and how we collect it is very clear, and that we have the right fields in here that we want to collect to get them in. So with a lead capture form, primarily the questions that you're going to ask on this form are going to be related around basic contact information. What you would normally put on a contact me form that's on your website, anything that you would use as a lead magnet to get them into Dubsado, those are going to be the types of questions that you would ask on this form. If you have one on your website right now, I know that if you're on Squarespace or WordPress or things like that, it comes with a contact form. This is going to end up replacing that form, because what we want is all of the people who are filling out this form, we want them to get into Dubsado. So this would essentially replace that. And we'll talk about sharing the form here in just a little bit. But let's talk about collecting the correct information. So if we go to our outline here, there's a couple things that we want to hit first. In Dubsado, if you're not familiar with building forms, we have different elements that you can use to build your form. And there are two elements that we have right now that have the capability of collecting information and mapping it into Dubsado. And those are the short answer boxes and the date select options. And those are called elements. So the short answer elements and the date select elements. So let's talk about those here. So like I said, on the right-hand side, these are all responsible for building your forms in Dubsado. You can click and drag these over and build your forms. And the two elements that we have that can collect information are the short answer boxes, where a client would type in information, and then the date select, where they would choose a date and that date can map in. So as you can see here on my form, I have a lot of short answers up here at the top, which is going to be what you'll want to use in order to get their name, last name, and all of that. The reason why you want to use the short answer boxes is because if I click on one of these, we'll talk about the first name here. If we click on this, what it's going to do is it's going to provide a space for you to ask the question that you want to ask. But then as you can see here, there's a place where it asks, where is this answer going to map to? If I click on this, this is going to give me a list of all of the different fields that I can map to in Dubsado. So for this one in particular, we would choose client first name. And how the fields are broken up in our system is they're broken up between projects and clients. So we have the project section up here, and then we have the client section here. And we'll talk a little bit more about project versus client in just a little bit. But just for basic foundational knowledge, right here we can see where if we're asking what their first name is, we want whatever they type in to get mapped to the first name in Dubsado. So right now it's kind of like a matching game. Whatever question we're asking, we want to map it to the correct area. So first name, we want that to map to first name. Last name, whatever they type in this box is going to map into their last name. And same thing with email, with phone, with address. We still want to use short answer boxes. If we click on this, if we ask for their address line 1, then that's going to map to address line 1. So it's important to understand that every single answer they type in will have its own short answer box. Every single one that you have. It's very similar, and I like to use this analogy, but it's very similar to ordering pizza. I know on a few different websites, whenever you type in, line 1, line 2, all of these have their own separate ones. You'll do the exact same thing on this form because you want to make sure that whatever they type in gets mapped to the correct area. And we'll talk a little bit later about if there's ones that come with the account. So we have default ones that come in Dubsado here. What if you want to collect other information? And we'll talk about custom map fields here in just a little bit. But so for this point here, the short answer and the date select are the two that you can use. Now, I do have a when is your event date. If you click on this, there is still a maps to option, and you're able to decide whatever date they pick, if that's going to be the project date as a whole, if it's just the start date or just the end date. And as you can see, I still have a few more here that you can use as well. And those are custom map fields, but as you can see, the date fields allow you to map to a certain place in the system. So that's very important to understand that it's short answer and date select are the two that we have right now that you can use. All of the other fields, you can use those on your form, but they won't collect information. It would just be a part of that form. And then you would take that answer and you can put it in someplace else. So it will still live on the form. But if you want to make it a part of client information moving forward or project information, then you'll want to use either short answer boxes or date select options. So now we'll talk about custom map fields. So there are instances where you want to ask a question on your form that you want to map, but it's not a part of our default map fields that we have. And you can create custom map fields in the settings menu. And we have an entire webinar devoted to smart fields and understanding those. So I won't go into too much detail in this webinar. But in the settings menu, what you're able to do in the custom map fields area here, and this is underneath your settings, is you can create map fields that aren't a part of Dubsado. So for example, if you need the bride's mother's name or bride's father's name, if you need their age or weight, we also have project smart fields where it's going to be more related to project information. So what's the budget for this project? Who is going to be the DJ? What is the engagement date? if you're doing cars, it would be what is the car make or the car model that's more related to project information. So you can create mapped fields that are not in Dubsado, but are related more towards your industry. And so if there's information that you need to collect that's outside of our default settings, you can go into the brand settings and create your own. And one point that I have underneath here is the difference between client versus project. Client map fields that you create are going to be related solely to the client, mostly meaning that if you were to work with them again, is that information going to be the same the next time you work with them? So a perfect example is like the bride's mother. She's not going to be different the next time, so that would be more related to client information. And project information is more related to the project that you're doing with them. That can change the next time. So the budget, that's a perfect example. If you're working with someone and you want to collect the budget for this project, you would make that a field that they could type in, and maybe that budget changes on a future project. So if you're making your custom map fields, just kind of understand, is this more client related or is this more project related? And that will give you a way that you can differentiate between the two. So short answer boxes and date select, those are the ones you can use to map. And then if there's anything in there that you want to add that's not a part of the system, you can do that via custom map fields. And the next thing I want to talk about is project sources. So something else that you can do on your form that actually gets overlooked is the project sources. You can track where your leads are coming from. So right here in the bottom left of the element chart is project tracking. And down here, you can see where I have a how did you hear about us? Typically, this is going to go on a lead capture form. You want to know where they're hearing from you, or it could be at the very end of the process too. I know some people say, hey, how did you hear about us? But either if you're using it on a lead capture or if you're using it maybe on a questionnaire at the end of your process, the project tracking tool, if we click on that, this is going to give you the ability to ask your client, where did you hear about me from? They can select an answer, and that's going to feed into our project breakdown that we have in reporting. And then you're able to see where a lot of your leads are coming from. Where is your business being generated from? So as you can see here, I have Facebook, Google, Instagram, referral, LinkedIn, Yelp, all of these different options here. You can create them directly from this element. You can say create new source if you just want to make them from here, or in the reporting section underneath project sources, you can create them there. But utilize that on your lead capture form so you can begin to collect information on where your leads are coming from. And then in the project breakdown area, you can see a chart on where you're collecting a lot of your information from. So definitely add that into your lead capture form so you can start to collect that data. And that's going to help you in your business to see where a majority of your business is coming from as people fill this form out. So that's collecting information. So that's how you'll collect the information on your lead capture form. And the next thing we're going to talk about is sharing this form. So now that you have your form built and you have all of it ready to go, you have it where you can collect leads, you have the first name, last name, you have all of your map fields in there, you're collecting the correct information, it's mapping to the right areas. Now let's talk about what to do when you're done with that. So there's two ways that you can share your lead capture form in Dubsado. The first way, if you click up here, there's a little share button. If we click on that, it's going to give you two ways to share this form. The first way is the iframe code. So this is going to be the way that you can embed this on your website. You can just copy and paste this. So if you just select all the text and click copy, you can go into your web builder and you can paste it into your web builder. Now, like I said previously, this is going to replace a contact form that you already have on your website. This is going to be your contact form moving forward. So go ahead and paste that into your website and it will be embedded on your website. And now when people visit, they can just go ahead and fill this form out here, and then it's going to create that new project in Dubsado. So you can either grab that frame code there Another option that you have is to use this direct link. This is a public URL, and you can just copy and paste this anywhere that you would like to. And when people click on this URL, it's going to open the form up on their internet browser. So back on the outline, a few things that I have for this are, you can post this on any social media site. If you want to post it on your Facebook profile, or if you want to put it on your bio on Instagram, LinkedIn, you can put this in there. I've seen people that put it as their email signatures. So if you typically are sending a cold email to somebody and you just want that URL in your email signature so anyone can click on that, open it up, put in their information and get created, that URL can really go anywhere. You can send it as a text message. It still works the exact same. This one actually is pretty cool, using it for internal use. So what you can do here, and this would just be exactly what I would do, you can bookmark this link on your computer, and then anytime you receive a phone call from a new inquiry, or maybe you get a cold email from somebody, you don't want to resend that form out to them because that would be redundant because they're giving you the information up front. So what you can do is you can actually paste this in your own internet browser, and you can open this up and fill it out as if you're the client. So if you want to have an internal lead capture form that you use, if you get a lot of phone calls, if you get a lot of cold leads that just email you, say, hey, I'm interested in this, this, and this, here's my name, here's my address, you can go ahead and just fill this in as if you're the client. And then that's still going to do the exact same thing. It's going to create that project in Dubsado. So really, with these two methods, there's no reason that you can't use the lead capture form. Sometimes I do hear people say, well, I don't have a website, so I can't use my lead capture form. Really, you can use it with a lot of different variety. You can put it on your social media sites, send it as a text message, use it internally. There's a ton of ways that you can use the lead capture form to get people into Dubsado. Another thing you can do as well is create it as a bit.ly link. So you can take this, if you don't like the hello.dubsado.com, you can take this, make it a bit.ly link and share that if you would like to. In our settings menu, if you want this to not say Dubsado, we have a space in there where you can make it your own domain name. So that way, when they do open it up, it's coming from your domain. There's a lot of ways to mask that as well, so it doesn't say Dubsado when you're sending it out to people or you're putting it on your social media sites. And so you can do that in the settings menu. And the other thing too as well is to think about multiple lead capture forms. So in Dubsado, you don't have to have just one lead capture. Think about, maybe you want to have a specific lead capture on your Facebook, or you want a specific lead capture on your Instagram. You're not limited to just one lead capture. So if you have an internal lead capture form that you built that's only for internal use, that works the same way too. So feel free to use as many different lead capture forms. You can have them all over in different places, but just know that the questions that you ask should be pertaining to where you're placing them. So don't feel restricted to just one lead capture form that you have to use across the board. You can definitely have multiple lead capture forms in different places asking different questions. And so really plan out and think how you want to use your lead capture forms in Dubsado. So that's how you can share the lead capture form. And next, we're going to talk about implementing workflows. So workflows is a huge part of Dubsado. It's something that everybody wants to use. But before you go in and build your workflows, one thing I really recommend doing is making sure that you understand how you want your workflows to start. And with workflows, the reason that I like to talk about lead captures with workflows is because your workflow is really going to be the initiation of your business process all the way until the completion of your process. So that whole string of business that you do with the client, the emails that you send, the forms that you send them, contracts that they sign, the tasks that you need to get done, that entire business process from initiation to completion, that's what your workflow is. So if we're talking about initiation, that means that it's when people are coming into Dubsado, which that is your lead capture form. And so with the lead captures, beyond just creating projects, you can also have workflows start from lead captures. So the goal with Dubsado is to have a lead capture on your website. And when somebody fills in that lead capture, it creates the project and adds the workflow so that your process can then start from them filling out that lead capture. So there's two different methods that you can use to start a workflow from a lead capture form. So let's talk about those here. The first method is in the settings menu. So we'll click on settings here. And it's the very top thing here beyond the expiration date, but it's towards the top here. It's called your default workflow. What this means is, regardless of who fills out your lead capture form, the exact same workflow would then kick in. So you have a very generic business process. It's not really based on what they're interested in or what service they want or what event they're interested in. This will be more along the lines of you have the exact same business process with everybody. Regardless of who fills it out, the same process will start. So what you can do is, if you have a workflow that you want to be just your generic workflow, you can add it here in the drop down. And what that's going to do for you is, once someone fills this out, that workflow will get added to the project that gets created and it will start sending. So if we're talking about an auto email that you want to kick in once they inquire, you can add that to your workflow as your first action. So once the project gets created, the workflow gets added to it, and then that email that was probably your first action then kicks in at that point. So the default workflow is going to be for a general business process or a generic business process. Then we also have the workflow element. So if we go back to the actual form here, right here above project tracking, we have a workflow element. And what this is designed to do is to give some variety or some conditional logic to which workflows are going to start. And so right here on the form, I already have one here that says, what type of event are you having? And what you can do here is, based off of a different answer they choose, you can have a different workflow begin. So for example, let's say I'm a photographer. If I click on portraits, and I want a portraits workflow to start. So I would go in and I would add my portraits workflow to that section. If they're interested in family photography, then I can go down here and I can grab my family workflow and have that begin. So this is more along the lines, if you have a business, but there's a lot of possibilities on what type of event they're having, what service they're interested in. Are they interested in this type of budget? So if you want to do where you have between $0 and $5,000 as your budget, you get this workflow. If your budget is between $10,000 and $15,000, you get this workflow. So you do have the possibility to have them go down a different path based off of an answer that they choose. So the reason why it's important to set this up before you go in and build your workflows is because if you go in and have a workflow built and then realize that this is how workflows start, then you might have to go back and redo your workflows and restructure them based off of this format. So at this point, if you do build your lead capture form, think to yourself, do I want to have a default workflow start? Or do I want to have it set up where I give them a lot of different options, and based off of an answer they choose, a different workflow can then kick in? So that's how workflows can also begin. And one thing to pay attention to as well on this is that you're only able to select one answer. So if you have services that you want to offer on here, but they can select portraits and sporting events and engagement, you don't want to use this element. You would want to use just regular check boxes and not have a workflow start. You would want just a generic workflow to start at that point. But this here, they can select one of these options, and then that will take them down the right path. So I know if you're in design, it might be, are you interested in web design, or are you interested in maybe logo design or something like that, that kind of splits them off into two different areas there. Same thing with like coaching. Are you interested in one-on-one coaching or more group coaching? So it really is on a macro level to get them just set down the right road. So that's going to be what you can use to kind of get them down the right path. One other thing too that I'll mention is with this, you're only able to have one workflow element per lead capture. So I can't add in another one and ask another question that would apply another workflow. You can only have one per form. So if you do have two on your lead capture form, then it basically cancels everything out. So none of them would start. So just pay attention to that. Make sure you're not using more than one on your form. And one other piece of information, the workflow element will always trump the default workflow. So if you have a workflow element and a default workflow, what will happen is when they make that choice on the form, that will automatically override whatever your default workflow is. So pay attention to that as well. You can't have two workflows start from this form. You can either only have one workflow element, but if you do have this in here too, the workflow element will override that. So hopefully that makes sense. I know it's kind of some stipulations on how to use it, but I did want to be transparent about the correct way to use the form there. So the workflow element is when it's conditional business, service, or event process. So it's all based off of condition. I only want this to happen if they choose this answer. So you can have workflow start. And then the last thing we're going to cover today is the settings menu. So if we go to the settings menu on the lead capture form, this also offers a lot of other different variety and other options that you can do with the form. So I want to cover some of the important ones here today. We already talked about the default workflow. The next thing we're going to talk about are the lead capture options. So one thing, I don't have it on the outline, but I'll just mention it really quickly. With the lead capture options, this is going to be the message that pops up as soon as they complete the lead capture form. And it only pops up very briefly just to give them a quick thank you message. So you can type this in, and that's going to be the first thing that they see whenever they fill out the lead capture form. The redirect URL. This you can really utilize to redirect them to another page, maybe on your website, maybe to an offer that you have for them, something like that. This is going to be a URL that you can plug in, and as soon as they get done filling out the lead capture form, it's going to redirect them to a different URL that you put in here. Now, there's only one instance, and I guess I'll preface it with this, just kind of as not a warning, but just to look out for this. In the redirect URL option, you will never want to put a Dubsado scheduler into the redirect URL. There are some times where I have seen people do that. What you would want to do is actually put the lead capture with the scheduler. And we have a whole scheduler webinar that you can look at on YouTube to get more information about how lead captures work with scheduling. But this here, the redirect URL is mainly going to be used so that you can redirect them to another page on your site, like a thank you page, or maybe it's your home page or something like that. The only instance that you will use a Dubsado URL to go into this redirect is for a very specific reason, and that is if you want your lead capture form to pull right back in after someone fills it out. And what I mean by that is this. Let's say you're at an event where you're collecting leads like a bridal show, or you're at a meet and greet where you're going to be meeting with a lot of people and you have a booth set up with a laptop and you want people to fill out leads. What you can do with this form is you can actually take the URL to this form. So if I were to copy and paste this and put this in the redirect, what that's going to do is as soon as someone fills out that lead capture, it's going to create the project, add the workflow, but then it's just going to open up the form again for the next person. So that way, if you're talking to people and you have a laptop set up and you want people to fill out a form and you don't want to have to go to your computer and then reload the form, by doing this, what that allows you to do is it allows the form to just regenerate right after someone fills it out. And then it's a blank lead capture for the next person to fill it out. So this is the only instance where you'll take a Dubsado URL and put it in this redirect URL option, but that's for a very specific purpose. That's more if you're going to be at a place where you're collecting leads and have a booth set up and you want people to be able to fill it out consistently one after another. So you can use that URL though. It'll take them to whatever URL you choose. The project status area with the project statuses. So we talked about if we go back to projects here, we talked about how once a lead capture form gets filled out, that it creates a project in Dubsado. With that project status in the settings, you can tell it once someone fills out that lead capture form, which status they're going to go into. And you can create more statuses underneath the customize option here, but you can tell it anyone who fills out this specific lead capture form, I want them to go into this status automatically. So right now I have mine set up to go into the inquiry email sent because the workflow that's attached would send out an inquiry email right away. So I want all of my leads that fill this out to get dropped into inquiry email sent because I know that's what status they're in now because the inquiry email is going to go out right away. So I know they're at this status when they fill out the lead capture form. So typically, the status that you want them to go into is whatever your first status is in the lead section. And that can vary from business to business, but that's going to be how you can use the status to kind of put them into the right area whenever they first come into the system. And then the last thing here, well, actually two more things. In the settings menu, the title. So the title is going to be what the project title comes in as once a lead capture form gets filled out. Now you can use client smart fields if you want to generate information about the client. So right here, basically every single lead capture form that comes in, the project title is going to say new lead dash client's first name. And so if we go back to the projects page, just for context, the project titles here, this is going to be what it comes in as when someone fills it out. Now you can change the title later. So you want to make sure that whatever your title is that you're putting in your lead capture form, it's really generic because that's going to be all the leads that come in. And then you can always go in and change that project title at another time if you want to make it more specific to what you're doing for that client. So you do have the ability to change the project title as it comes in to whatever you would like it to say. And you can use those client smart fields to give more context to that new lead as it comes in. And the very last thing here, we have team member selection. Let me talk about that. You do have the ability as well, if you do have multi-users, you can decide in this box that if someone fills out this specific lead capture form, that team member gets assigned or that team or that multi-user gets assigned to it. So how does that look in a real life situation? Let's say that you have a bunch of different team members and they all have their individual lead capture forms. If someone fills out this team member's lead capture form, you can make sure that that team member is assigned to them each time. So maybe you have team members or multi-users where in your department, if you have someone who fills out anything from Facebook, it goes to this team member, or any Instagram leads, this team member automatically gets them. You can create different lead captures. And once this lead capture gets filled out, whoever the team or the multi-user is that's assigned to this, they would automatically get assigned every single time. So you don't have to manually go in and assign projects to people. You can have specific lead captures that once those get filled out, that it would assign it to the right team member. So you can think about some cool ways to use that. And then the very last thing is going to be the Zapier integration. So we do have the ability to have a link up with Zapier where once someone fills out a lead capture form here, it automatically will get it will transfer that information over to another platform. So if you want where someone fills this out for them to get created in Google Sheets or to get added to a MailChimp have it transferred over to MailChimp or to Slack, different things like that. We do have a Zapier integration underneath the settings menu, underneath integrations, where you can link it up where once someone fills out a lead capture form, it can then take that information and put it into another platform. So we won't get into all the specifics of that and go into Zapier because that's more on the Zapier end of how you want to integrate it. And there are hundreds and hundreds of different platforms that you can tie it to, but we do have that capability. So take a look at that in your Zapier, and you can have it be where once someone fills this form out, it can then transfer that information over into a different platform if you would like to. So that's a little bonus. If you do like integrations, you can check that out. But that is basically a really good rundown of all the different things that lead capture forms can do and the importance of why you want to be using them. It's going to take a lot of work off of your hands as far as tracking where leads are coming from. You won't have to manually create projects. You can have your workflows start from there. You can use custom map fields to collect information from the client up front. So there are so many things about the lead capture forms that you can use for your business to take time off of your hands and to automate a lot of things. And so definitely take time to understand how you want your lead capture forms to start. How many lead capture forms are you going to use? Do you need an internal lead capture form? Do you want a specific one for Facebook? How do you want your workflows to start from that Facebook lead capture? So really take time to plan out your lead captures, because then when you get to workflows, it'll really help you say, okay, I know I have these different lead captures. I want these workflows to begin from these lead captures. How do I want to write out my workflow so that it makes sense for my lead captures? So really the lead capture is that first piece of content. And if you have it set up really well, then it's going to make your business very organized on the back end when it comes into Dubsado. So really take a lot of time to map out your lead capture forms and how you want to use them. And that's going to benefit you tremendously once you start collecting leads and getting them into Dubsado. So